Well, I'm doing a kind of a mad thing this week. The way I'm recording kind of very incoherent pieces. I was on the telly last night, the 2nd of December. You'll get it on the RTE player if you want. It was a programme called Altered States. And to be honest with you, I thought it was a very good programme. I particularly liked the fella that Mark Little was interviewing, who was talking about the fact that there's a new concept of capitalism, which is not about trying to grow gross national product and get more money and everybody try to be the winner with most money. It's about friendliness. It's a measure of happiness. And I thought that was really, really helpful. And I also thought Margaret Ward's piece was very helpful. So I really enjoyed it, and I did my little contribution myself, and I hope you like that. It was about faith. I do wonder, am I right to be talking about this stuff? I really do wonder, and I do question the podcast every time I sit down of a weekend. I have this enthusiasm in me to talk about it, to talk about faith, and then I wonder, am I just mad? Am I just alone in a shed studio in the hills above Loch Allen, ranting away in some sort of denial of modernity? Because there's no doubt that the world is changing very fast. But what keeps me kind of enthused is, as much as I try and follow what other people are saying, there's really a new idea coming, and that is that faith is not about God, but it's about being human. So that there's a side of our brains that need to be poetic, that need to find meaning in creative ways. And that the highest way to do this is through ritual and through the kind of language of religion and faith. And that, I think, if that's human, if that makes us better humans, then it's a really interesting way to talk about faith. Is to talk about it as what we do to be better as human beings, rather than, we do it because there's a God. But I still think I'm half mad to be ranting. One of the things I'm looking forward to in the new year is being back with the Irish Times. So I'll be writing a column every week in the Irish Times. The first one I'll be writing will be after the 6th of January, so it takes about 2 weeks then before it's in the paper. And what that will do for me, which will be a great help, it always grounded me. By writing a column, it grounded me in reality, because you knew that there was a very, very real community of readers who were checking you every week. And when I got sick 2 years ago, and the lockdown happened, which left us all, I missed being on stage. And so what I discovered was that the podcast helped. And the podcast that I do every week, it also kind of grounds me. But sometimes I think the podcast, because I'm talking off the top of my head, I do have notes and I do have things prepared, but in general I'm kind of talking, I begin to think you're there. I begin to think that this is just a kind of a personal conversation between the two of us. And in those conversations, you do sometimes go a little bit sort of, well, you have no measure of what you're saying. The more open you become, the more emotional or enthusiastic you become about saying something, you get to this stage where you're not really sure. Is this going down well? Until you're driving home in the car and the lady wife is saying, Jesus, you were talking too much there. And I find that in the podcasts, I end up talking about anything. My daughter sent me a reindeer, right? A little teddy bear reindeer. She won it in a competition, in the Christmas market in Galway, throwing a ball at something and then winning the prize. And it's a tiny little reindeer I'm a big grown man and she sends me like a teddy bear. It reminds me of the fact that I once had a teddy bear that I was very fond of, right? And I had got a bit old maybe for a teddy bear. I don't know what age I was, 7 or 8, but probably too old for a teddy bear. In those days, teddy bears were for people under 4 or 5 years of age, and after that you weren't encouraged to have a teddy bear. Nowadays, you'd see people in teenage children and that have teddy bears. And now you see adults with teddy bears. And she gave me this teddy bear as a reindeer. I wouldn't like to be, I wouldn't like people to think of a teddy bear. There's something embarrassing about that. My notion of myself as a man, I'm a big serious man, like I don't go around with teddy bear. But anyway, when I was young, I had a teddy bear, and I was very fond of the teddy bear, and I wasn't able to say that I was fond of the teddy bear. Because it wasn't the kind of a thing in those days that you said, you didn't express emotion at all, certainly not for a teddy bear. And one day, coming up to Christmas, it disappeared. I couldn't find me teddy bear anywhere. Where is he, I'd say to me mammy. And the mother told me she had given it away. There was a charity thing advertised on the television that they were collecting toys and teddy bears for poor children. And there was a drop-in centre that you could either leave it in your local Vincent de Paul or send it in the post. And she said she had taken all the things that she thought we didn't need and sent them. And she'd sent away me teddy bear. I was absolutely devastated. Like, Christmas is supposed to be a time of peace and joy and happiness, and there I was, absolutely devastated, traumatised. I would need counselling because I had no teddy bear. And I couldn't tell anybody because they were days that it was just unspeakable to share emotions. I remember my mother saying to me one time, I looked like there was tears coming out of my eyes. She said, "Go upstairs and have a cry." Now, she was a harsh woman in one sense, even though she was a beautiful woman and I loved her dearly and she loved me dearly. But it's just we lived in different times, didn't we? I don't know where it came from. I think it was fear. A lot of it was fear, of poverty. There was something about the fear of poverty that you couldn't show your insides, you couldn't show your secret emotions. And so you didn't indulge your emotions, and they certainly didn't indulge the emotions of children in the 50s and early 60s. And that was my story of a teddy bear. And traumatising it was, there's no doubt. And now I have oodles of teddy bears because the daughter, she sent me an elephant one time. It's a pink elephant and it's on a shelf. I'm looking at it as I'm talking to you. She gave it to me when I was doing the Bull McCabe in John B. Keane's The Field in the Gaiety in Dublin about 2015. It was the 50th anniversary of the play and I was doing the Bull McCabe. And the way just before it opens on the opening night, people will send you good wishes and good luck, little cards and stuff. And she sent me this pink elephant. Well, I'll tell you, that show was so difficult to do, being in front of 800 people every night with no microphone and being on stage nearly all the time for 2 hours. It took so much out of me. 7 days a week, and then on a Saturday we used to have a matinee at 3 o'clock. We'd have to do the whole show for about 1,000 people and then take a break for an hour and a half and come back and do the same show again at 8 o'clock that night. That was, oh Jesus, it was tough going. Physically it was tough going. And what got me through that whole experience was the little pink elephant. It really did. It's a funny thing, isn't it, the way something like that physically, and you can cuddle it. And, a grown man in his late 50s, and there he is cuddling a little pink elephant. Actually, I was over 60 when I did the Bull McCabe, and that's too old to be doing that show. When Colm Tóibín and various other, Neil Tóibín, I should say, I'm sorry, when Neil Tóibín and other people have done that show, they're usually in their mid-40s. That would be the kind of age that an actor should be for that role. And then Richard Harris came along and did the movie. He was very old doing the movie, but he wanted to do it. I want to do this. And so he got doing it. I'd have a lot of questions about whether it was worth doing it. It became an iconic movie, even though, I don't know, I think it was a kind of a bit of a caricature version of the Bull McCabe. Anyway, he did it, but what he certainly did was he established the bull as an older man, and that started to play into the way it was cast, and that's why I was being offered the part when I was in my 60s. I took it. It was a privilege to do it. I have on the wall beside me, actually, a picture of me and Mrs. Keane, John B. Keane's wife. And my goodness, that's the two of us embracing each other on the night of the show. I have that framed. It's the only thing I have in this room where there's a picture of me. I was so proud of that show, but it was very, very difficult. And I'd come into the dressing room in the evening to comfort myself, and I'd look at the little elephant that my daughter had given me on the first night, and it would comfort me. It would make me feel, you have to go out in front of 800 people or 900 people. You have to do the show well. That's hard going, but you are loved. You are loved, and that is just so important to have that sense that you are loved. And recently I was talking to a researcher on the Brendan O'Connor show, because I'll be doing the Brendan O'Connor show this coming Sunday, the 5th of December. And I was chatting with the researcher, and we were talking about that whole sense of, how you need love. And she was saying, like, what about the person who has none, who has no love, who is alone, who's completely alone and lonely? And I had to say, I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. And if, you could be there at this moment feeling deeply alone and deeply unloved. And I think, to be honest with you, I think my mother felt like that for years after her husband died, and she couldn't understand maybe that her children had grown up and had gone on with their own lives, and that, we could visit her once a week or something, but we couldn't go back and live the life of community with her like a family, because life had moved on and she was left widowed and alone and broken-hearted, and God, it really, really affected her. And it's very, very hard to say, how do you reach out to somebody like that? And how do you reach out to somebody like that at Christmas? How do you kind of try and assure them that they are loved without being sentimental and trite, And I don't know the answer. I really, really don't know. I know in my own life, there have been times in my own life when I felt alone. And I felt sometimes so completely alone that in that loneliness, I found God. I found that in the deepest loneliness, like even I remember when they were taking me into theatre in Beaumont Hospital last March for the second operation, to try and, do a big spinal operation to fix what they had not been able to fix 6 months earlier. And I was scared, and they warned me. They said, there's dangers here. You could lose the power of your legs, you could lose the power of your kidneys, or whatever. But we're going to do it. We're going to take a risk and try it and do it. And I said, that's fine. Now, COVID was affecting everything because I had no visits from the beloved or from my daughter or family. I was alone in the hospital for the week before the operation. And then I remember going in. I was going into the theatre, and there's a big long area, like a big long ward, and I was lying in the bed in this ward on like a wheelie bed, and I had to wait there, and they checked your blood pressure and the stent and my artery and the this and that and the other, and eventually then they were ready for me, and I was wheeled in through these swing doors, and then I was into a big space where they moved me from the bed, they lifted me from the bed onto this slab, onto this big high-tech white marble kind of table, and I'm lying there, and on one side of me they're putting in a drip, and another side they're checking blood pressure or they're taking blood. So my two arms are stretched out, and I'm thinking I'm like Christ on the cross, and I'm looking up at above the door, above the swing doors that had just come in. I'm looking up, and there was a shape. There was an abstract shape. I can't remember what it was. It was like boxes on a shelf, It's just things, and they created the shape, and in the shape, I saw the crucified Christ. I projected out onto it just a sense like it was an icon. And I felt in that moment both completely alone, completely lonely and frightened that once this gas and anaesthetic happened to me, I might wake up not able to walk or something, or the operation being a failure. I felt so alone, so vulnerable. And yet in that, I tried to kind of imagine, I projected onto the shelf and the little old boxes on the shelf, I kind of projected an image of a crucified Christ as a kind of an icon. And that's how I found comfort. That's how I found comfort. And I would honestly say that I was completely away from religion for decades, from Christian religion. And I was very, very content and very happy and very enriched by being in the Buddhist tradition and going over to Jampaling and having a teacher and learning all about Buddhism. And it was really enriching. And I would do meditations and I would light candles in front of a little shrine and all the rest of it. And I still do that. It was very, very beautiful. Very, very beautiful. But there was two turning points in my life recently. One was in 2015 when the beloved, my lady wife, came back from Warsaw, and she came back with an icon of the mother, the Kazan icon. If you Google Kazan icon, you'll see the icon that she made a replica of. Spent a year doing it in the museum in Warsaw. It's a very beautiful thing. And also made a copy to bring home, gave it to me. I says to her, well, what do I do with this? I wasn't going to put it on the wall as an art object. I used it to see, could I get back into Christian devotion? And my goodness, I realized I could get into it in a very enthusiastic way. And it began to comfort me. It began to make me feel that sense of being loved even when I was alone. And the second turning point, I'd say the second turning point really in my life was that moment going in for the second operation, knowing the first one had failed, knowing that it was very risky, knowing that it was a big deal to let them, drill through the bones in your spine to get in at your dural area and see could they fix what was wrong with your arteries. And being there and being alone for a while because of COVID and not having the comfort of the family around you, and then you're going to be just, put out this arm and get a needle in it, put out that arm, get a needle in it, and you're just there. You just let yourself go. I mean, it's important in those moments not to struggle. You have to surrender to the anaesthetic, surrender to the nurses and the doctors, and you feel alone. And I felt so alone in that moment. And then, as I say, because I had been looking at icons so often, didn't I project up? I just looked over the doors that I had come in, and I just imagined I'm looking at an icon of Christ. And I felt in that moment, not a sentimental comfort, not that there's some kind of, ghost around me. No, but I felt existentially in the molecules and atoms of the operating table, in the love and compassion of the nurses, the anaesthetist and the doctor and the surgeons, in the kind of, in the belonging, just the belonging in the cosmos. I felt our life is full of suffering as much as it is full of Christ suffering, and at the same time, be not afraid. Be not afraid. If you're in the boat and it's stormy, be not afraid, because there's some Christ who sleeps, who will not let you go, even in the biggest storm. I felt all that, and it was a real turning point in my life in this recent times. I suppose that the little elephant that I got when the time I was doing the Bull McCabe, that also was a kind of an icon. And I think the teddy bear that I had that my mother took away from me, I think was a kind of an icon. It's a strange thing how an icon is a very natural thing. Do you know what I mean? You have a template in your mind in your unconscious, and you project it out and you embody it in a little teddy bear. And teddy bear's a lifeless thing with a bit of fluff in it and two little buttons for eyes, and yet you see a child hugging that. What are they hugging? Isn't it interesting? You know, what are they belonging to in that? My daughter always used to like fish rather than little dolls. And she had one doll she loved. One single doll she loved. It was a kind of a soft doll. She loved it. She minded it. She ran it around in a toy buggy, and it vanished into, the shed for many, many years. And, it reappeared about 2 years ago, and she was so thrilled. She was rummaging through our rubbish, old boxes with cobwebs and dirt and old dust on them. And God, she opened one box and she found the little doll, Momo she used to call it, little baby kind of figure, little doll, soft doll. What are they? What do they do to our minds? And how are we relating? Because we know that it's not alive, and yet it's alive on the inside. So we're expressing on the outside. With my little teddy, I'm expressing on the outside some deep sense of love that I have on the inside. I'd be certainly a bit worried about young teenagers particularly, or children even younger, spending so much time on the video machines, where the video machine is an aggressive game of killing. Because I don't know what that might be reinforcing in their psyche and their unconscious. Be another way of putting it. But I think that with the doll and as I say, my daughter always used to love animals, that she'd have dolphins. Any amount of dolphins, and if I went anywhere in her childhood, I might go to New York, or I might go to Chicago, or I might go to London or Dublin or what, I always had to bring back ER. So that she, at one stage, she had a room full of ER. You couldn't get into the room for donkeys. It was no surprise that when she wanted to give me a good luck charm, and I was doing the Bull McCabe, that she gave me a little animal, like a little furry teddy that he's an elephant. So he's a really good elephant. I'm looking at him here, and he's two little button eyes and a big long trunk, and his big ears. He's looking straight at me from a shelf. And the more I talk about him, the more alive he becomes. So there's something you'd say is very, very natural about this dynamic where we get kind of huge emotions on the inside and we embody them and externalize them. In teddy bears as children, we have an innate ability to do this. And that brings me back to those icons that are there, present, as kind of what they say in the Orthodox tradition is that the icon is a sort of a lens through which you experience heaven. Or alternatively, they say it's kind of a light. It's like a mirror that's reflecting. So that in Western art you get a very secularization or humanizing of aesthetic beauty. You get it in the way that Michelangelo or Da Vinci or all the boys Rembrandt, they start to make things super real in terms of being human. And they illustrate the beauty of the body as in the body. Whereas what the icons tend to do in the Christian Orthodox tradition is to illustrate humanity as a lens through which comes the light of the divinity. So they have techniques that, they'll always have the nose. The nose is always made in an icon, you'll notice, very thin, very slender, very narrow. And you'll notice the lips are always made very, very small, very tight. And they're always closed. And these two things kind of reduce the sense of human sensuality in the face, even though they're still made very elegant with beautiful symmetrical lines and so forth. But they kind of reduce the potential of the face to express human emotion. And at the same time, the eyes in the icon are usually made a little bit larger, a little bit bigger. Or, in fact, one icon, wise man, a Mr. Vladimir Lusky, writing in the 1950s, and it's his book that I had to be following and telling you about. But he says the eyes are kind of made as big as possible in an icon, because the eyes are the windows of the soul. And so in the eyes, in the gaze of the icon, the light of heaven is coming through. It is always saying, the icon is always saying that humanity is God. Humanity, we carry the presence of the eternal mystery of love in our being, if we could allow it through. When we look at the icon, this is what we see. Not a celebration of human beauty, but a celebration, or a kind of a lens through which we can experience this sense of light. And that is what's different from the icon to Western art, as the Western art goes into the Renaissance. But they're very, very beautiful, and it's also really interesting that, and they never make an icon of God, if you like. Just think about it. In all the icons you've seen, in all the icons in all the world, the Orthodox Christians never make an icon of God, as in God the Father, but God. Now, in the West, we started making, Michelangelo and various people started depicting God as, the old wise man, or the old powerful kind of Apollo sort of man on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. You see him there putting his finger out to Adam, big, powerful patriarch. And then that became very much the idea of God. That became the idea of God. And then when, after the Enlightenment, you go into modernity, and people are rejecting God, this is the God they're rejecting. So you say, well, somebody says to you, well, I don't believe in God. And you say, well, what do you mean by God? Well, this whole idea that, there's this big male power up there looking after us. And they're getting it from Western art. They're not actually getting it from the original Christian tradition. The original Christian tradition, let's say, in the Orthodox tradition of Eastern Europe, is there for 1,500 years making icons, but never making an icon of God, as in God the Father, because it was there in the Old Testament. It was there. Never make a graven image. You cannot make an image of God. And it's there in Islam, which maybe at the time as it was kind of growing out of Christianity and carrying with it the narratives of Jesus and Mary and all the rest of it, they too said, no, you can never make an image of God. God is not to be made an image of. And sometimes that can be a great help in our culture to try and remind ourselves that this idea of the big patriarchal God is actually just an accretion of the past few hundred years, but there is a deeper Christian understanding that God is a presence that can never be described. The only thing you can describe is the way that God penetrates human experience. And that's where you come to Christ, as the complete penetration, the fullness, the homoousion, the one being with the Father. This is completely the Father in human terms, not in the fatherhood. And also in the saints, whether it be his mother or Mary Magdalene or, John the Baptist, and all those images of saints that you see in the church are in the icons. They're trying to make visual the human face as it is alive and glows with a deeper light, the light of divinity. And it's no wonder, I suppose, that I sometimes light a candle in front of an icon. I'm not trying to advocate Christianity here. I'm not trying to advocate icons, unless you like them. But whether it be in the Hindu tradition, in the Jewish tradition, in the Christian tradition, Buddhist, whatever, I am definitely saying that ritual allows you to be human at a deeper level than just with your rational mind. And you don't have to, join a dance group or join some huge big choral company in a cathedral to talk about ritual. Ritual is something that you can do privately, in the kitchen, in your bedroom, anywhere in the house, simply to put an icon or an image. It could be an image of, as I've often said, your beloved, somebody that you've lost, a partner, a child, a parent, and you might leave their photograph, you might leave a little flower or even a bowl of water as a gift, as a symbol of acknowledging their presence in heaven. And to do that, just yourself, just privately, can be a wonderful, comforting ritual. You might think that the bowl of water is an interesting one because I associate it very much with Buddhism. In Buddhism, there's 7 bowls, and they're water bowls, and you place them in front of an image of the Buddha, and this is a ritual of kind of rejoicing in the presence of the enlightened mind, feeling that presence in your own mind, your own mind stream. So it's a very, very simple thing, and they do it a lot with the water bowls. But the funny thing is, I remember my mother, and many women like her, but my mother on All Souls' Eve used to leave a jug of water on the table for the souls that had gone before us. The souls of all our ancestors and her mother and father and all the loved ones. They were out there not completely united with happiness and God and deified like saints, but they were still out there as part of the kind of communion of saints. And the acknowledgement of them was All Souls' Day. And on the eve of that, there was a tradition my mother observed, and that was leaving out a bowl of water on a clean kitchen table in case any of them came back for a drink. You might say, well, was that like, she thought they were suffering in purgatory? I don't think it is. I don't think it's that she thought they were suffering in a negative way in purgatory, but she also didn't think they had become, as enlightened as Mary, the Mother of God, or John the Baptist. So there had to be a sense that there was an interim space or journey. Maybe kind of similar to what Buddhists think about when they talk about reincarnation, when they talk about the endless reincarnating in order to achieve in a single lifetime a sense of complete enlightenment, selflessness, dissolving of the ego, and being absorbed into the oneness of being and consciousness. I think that model is available within the Christian tradition as well. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to think about purgatory as like, place of suffering. But it is saying that my ancestors will not perish. In some way they go to God, and in some way that journey may still be continuing. And here's a ritual that says, I pray for them and hope that they pray for me. And most of the time, I think when we're trying to use loved ones, as focuses of our attention, it's usually that we're praying to them. I know people who have, maybe a partner who has passed away, and they would say to me, like, there's not a day goes by but I talk to him. And I have to say that there was periods in my life when, my mother was present to me, an uncle was present to me, a dear friend who passed away was present to me. At different times in my life, somebody who passed away became present in a way that I used them as the focus of my prayer. And on a daily basis, you'd say, help, be with me. So the loneliness I was talking about earlier, what do you do at this time of year when there's somebody who really has nobody? And the only answer I could come up with, talking to a researcher now from the Brendan O'Connor show, the only answer I could come up with was, and I don't do this very well, but all you can say is reach out. Like, rather than think about the person, well, are there people out there who are completely lonely? Well, we can solve that only at a communal level. You can't solve it at an individual level. You can't focus on the one person and say, look, they're completely lonely. Is life meaningless? No, you have to say, let's think as a community, as a group of 100 people, as a parish, as a town, as a village, or as an extended family. Let's think of us all together as not being lonely. So cast your eye around, see is there one who's particularly vulnerable, and at this time of year, go reach out to them. Go visit them. Go take up the phone or the text. It's amazing how powerful the text has become. And it's very simple. It's not overburden you or the other person with emotion, but God, it's so simple to reach out and say, text, hello Joe, I was just thinking about you. Hope you're well. And that's all. Keep it light. You're not prying into someone's life. It's not as intrusive as a phone call. Yet you're given a signal. I was thinking about you. And I think we use the word, or the phrase, I was thinking about you. I think we use it really in the same way as in the old days we would have said, I'm praying for you. We're not saying, when I say a text to somebody that I haven't seen for a while, and I think he might be suffering a little bit because he's lost his mother or something, and I think he might be sad and he's under pressure, so I'm, hello Joe, I text, just thinking about you, hope you're well, Michael. Well, now if I send that out, I do not mean I'm intellectually thinking about him. I'm not there sort of thinking, oh, what age is he, how old is he now? I'm not doing it mentally, intellectually. I'm doing it with my heart. I'm thinking about him with my heart. I'm becoming conscious of him with my heart. And it's benefiting me to do that because I'm using this extraordinary gift that we have as human beings, that we can pull our consciousness away from the intellectual tree of knowing, the tree of knowledge. We can pull it down into the heart, and we can hold our consciousness in the heart, like emotionally reaching out. It's like rays of light, the Buddhists would describe it as, rays of light going out from my heart in the 10 directions to all other sentient beings, to the beings that I love, my friends, to the beings who are strangers, and to the beings that I do not like and who don't like me and who I've had clashes with. But yet I'm sending out this sort of energy from my heart to every single one of them in the 10 directions. Love, compassion. What's love and compassion in Buddhist terms? Well, love in Buddhist terms technically is that deep wish for the other person's well-being. That deep wish. I wish that person succeeds in everything they do in this lifetime, and that at the end of this lifetime they become enlightened. That's love. That's the wish for the other person to be supremely happy. And compassion is being able to walk in their shoes, to be able to think about the suffering of some other being and feel, you poor creature, I wish that I could be taking that suffering from you that I could have that sickness rather than you, or that I could dissolve that sickness for you. And thinking about the minute by minute suffering of that person in this moment. And that is compassion, mental compassion. And that's where you bring the mind down into the heart. And you feel love and compassion for your friends, for your enemies, for strangers. It's a very, very powerful meditation in Buddhist terms. And in Christian terms, it's also very powerful. It's what we really meant in detail when we used to say, I'll say a prayer for you. But it's also, I think, underneath the beautiful modern phrase, I was thinking about you. So text somebody any day in the Christmas season when you're feeling like a bit too stressed by the shopping, a bit too stressed by finances, a bit too stressed by the tensions within the family. And get out the little phone and text somebody that you haven't been speaking to all year and you think may have gone through a little bit of suffering during the year or may be lonely during the year. And just say, hello, Joe. I was just thinking about you. Hope all is well. And they'll know what you're doing. They'll know you're saying you're praying for them. They'll know that. I know that when I get a message from somebody like that. When somebody sends me a text saying, I was thinking about you. It's a beautiful thing. To be honest with you, I think it's, for me, I use that more than Christmas cards. And I suppose I should not put down Christmas cards because they too bring such a message of love, of reaching out from your heart to somebody else's heart. You know, they extend it out. That you've thought so much that you actually bought one of them Christmas cards, wrote your name in it, put it in an envelope, put my address in it and sent it to me. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of thinking about me. I appreciate it deeply. So I'm not putting down Christmas cards. But I'm saying that I never really used them. But since text messages began, I find that such a powerful, beautiful, wonderful way to reach out to people. Let's use it if it's there, and if you're on it, use it, reach out, say hello to people. Thinking about you. It's the miracle of consciousness that we can actually allow it to come into the heart. That is really a miracle, you know. So I'm really glad to have been with you on this weekend. We're warming up first weekend in December 2021 and moving towards second Sunday in Advent, I think, this Sunday. Brendan O'Connor, about 12 o'clock, will be chatting to me on the phone. A brief old chat, you know. And after that, onwards to Christmas. The poetry of faith. And that's what Christmas is going to be for me this year. More than it was last year, I think. More than any other year. And it won't be that I'll go into religious services. Not necessarily, no, not at all. But in the heart, there is a cloister. And in the cloisters, there is a room. And in the room, if you go in there and listen, God is like a mother hen that would mind her chickens. It's a motherliness. Julian of Norwich uses that as well. Julian of Norwich is a fantastic writer, 1,000 years ago. But she talks hugely about the motherliness of God. And even Christ on the cross, she talks about him as extending through Christ comes God's motherliness. It's the motherliness of unconditional love. Love in the heart is the heart of the matter. Thank you for being here. I hope you're all going to be really, really happy at Christmas time, and that you're going to find this particular Christmas really meaningful, really special, really new, really transformative. I hope you're going to find love, even if you're sad, even if people are not sending you any texts. but that somewhere you will see, like an icon, you'll see signs in the sky, like a star, that tell you, be not afraid, there is peace, and it is for you, and it is a gift for you. Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.